You are now listening to Bullhook Golf, an unfiltered golf podcast taking you inside the ropes with unfiltered stories, insights, analysis, and exclusive interviews. Welcome back, everybody, to Bullhook Golf, the podcast. I'm Matt Cook, this is Bobby Brown, and we've got another exciting episode for all of you. So this week, we're going to recap our weeks, Matt and Bobby. It's a little story time between the two of us. It's becoming a fan favorite of a segment, so we're going to continue that tradition. Then we got some breaking news, the Caddy edition. We're going to dive into the Honda Classic. We're going to recap the week out there since Bobby was out there, and we're going to put to rest some of the rumor mill at the moment. And penny bet recap because it was a doozy. I mean, we had a lot of penny bets out there. Yeah. Upcoming Arnold Palmer Invitational. I'm actually wearing the Arnold Palmer brand. I don't know if it's on the sleeve. I can't quite tell. But if you're watching this on YouTube, I am wearing an Arnold Palmer branded golf shirt. It's my only one that I own. But man, it is form-fitting and it is very nice. Very nice. And then we've got also, we finally get to recap another LIV event. So LIV Golf Mayakoba. I think they said the pronunciation on air, which apparently Mayakoba is not correct according to the LIV Golf broadcast team. But anyways, I watched the entire thing, Bobby. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it, but
not one bit.
why don't we?
Not one bit. I was working,
You're going to be leaning on me on that one. But
yeah.
let's dive into story time with Matt and Bobby. How's your week, Bobby?
Sure. It was great. I mean, it was a great week. Rekindled an old flame with Sungjae. You know, it was fun being out there with him for the week and getting a marquee pairing for as much as a marquee pairing as it was with Sungjae and Cooch and Sveni, Adam Svensson. And it was fun, man. I mean, honestly, I enjoyed, he was on best behavior. It's like a hunt. Well, you know all about honeymoons. Yours is coming up soon, right? So
Yeah.
It was a 1 week honeymoon. There was no shit talking or anything like that. He striped it. I mean, he made 3 bad swings all week. I will tell you this: if you went back on Sunday night, Matt, and you looked at his stats and you left out putting, I was telling Troy this during the practice round. I go, if you left out putting, you would have came up to me on the putting green and said, "Hey, congratulations on finishing 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th." So he was all the way down the board on his stats. He was like 2nd, 4th, 3rd, 6th, 7th, 8th, 8 for 8 out of the bunkers. Shot gained this, shot gained that through the roof. And then putting, of 80 guys that made the cut, I think he finished 73rd at like -4 point something. And it was just like, oh man, I felt like he was seeing the same putt the whole time: 8, 10, 12 feet, 8, 10, 12 feet. And he had a few lip outs and nothing wrong with his stroke at all. He just looked like he was struggling reading them. So but
was he not calling you in, Bobby?
He called me in once on 4 on Saturday because he was I could tell he didn't really know what it was doing. And I had seen that putt before and I had some notes in my book, and I was just showing him the notes and we kind of agreed on something. I had it going. It was kind of a triple breaker, it was right to left early, up in the high 25 footer, kind of straight through the middle. And then as it dies, I had it going right. And he's like, "Oh, I don't see it going right." And then I tried to point out how much green was there and that kind of stuff. And it did go right late. I'm not sure even if he would have played for it to go right, he would have made it. But he was like, "Oh man, that was a good read at the end." But he is, I didn't have to do, he has an uncanny ability. Everything's pin high with him. That's like his whole world, right? But he has an uncanny ability to feel out a golf shot when he is in between clubs. And he had a lot of pin high looks. I'll tell you one thing I noticed about him was he seems more polished to me now, Matt. Like when it's not your typical Sungjae, in quotation marks, Korean that just goes at every flag, right? I noticed a few times early in the week, like on Thursday and Friday, where he's in between clubs and you couldn't be shorter, you couldn't be long. And he was telling me, he's like, "Oh God, in between clubs, I just hit smart shot, work for position, take 25 or 30 feet." And he did it all week long and he just took what the golf course gave him. He never really lost his shit. I mean, he made a bad swing on, those are 2 stressful holes for us, right? 15 and 17 when the wind's pumping. And then the wind really never started pumping. It was at its worst when we played in the afternoon Thursday and he shot 3 under. I think he was 6th or 7th after the day was over. But he made a few just a few bad swings, and he got unlucky on a par five and made a couple doubles and a bogey with those bad swings. But it really came down to putting. I thought I was going to get it on Sunday because he probably hit 8 or 9 greens in a row on Sunday, couldn't make a putt. He turned in 2 under, got to 4 under for the tournament, which was in the low 20s, maybe T21. So I'm like, oh man, if he makes a couple on the backside, he's going to finish in the top 15 and we're going to make some cash. He'll make some points and move up the FedEx Cup list. And we got to 11, which is a pretty good hole. It's a 3-wood off a tee, huh? And then you have a half island green where you're covering water, and it was one of those winds that it was one of those 4-mile-an-hour winds that caddies don't like. That's just dancing. It's all over the place, and you couldn't really get it consistently. And I thought I had a pretty good handle on it, and it was just this hole that was just 5 over the water. It's the hole that Akshay Bhatia, I think, hit it in the water, and maybe if I'm thinking straight, and he took his clothes off like a big fucking production out of a young
needs
kid.
to eat a cheeseburger.
Yeah, it's funny. I was checking him out on the driving range, and for as skinny as he is, he's toned, right? He's ripped. I could tell with the short sleeve shirts, and I'm like, oh, he does some gym work for sure. And anyways, getting back to that, we were, it was 142 meters, and he usually hits a 8-iron between 140. If he steps on it, it's 150 meters. What does that mean to people in yards? That means it's about, I use roughly 10%. So it's about, it's a $160, low 160s club or something like that, if that helps everybody out. And we were way in the left side of the fairway, and this is where the communication thing comes in. And he's asking me about the wind, and he's throwing up grass, and I'm throwing up grass, and it's straight off the right, not like any hurt. So, he was being so good about positioning and missing in the right spots all week. I didn't feel like I needed to say, this ball needs to end left of the flagstick, because the green kind of angles like this, and if you push one right and it gets hung up on the wind, it's a big cover. It's like a pass pin eye cover. And so he hits like this floater 8-iron that's going dead right. And I fucking knew it was soup immediately, and he's like posing at it and he's staring at it, and it ends up like 5 yards short in the water, big splash. And he just like give me the old like look at me like, and then he immediately doesn't say anything. He goes and he throws the grass up, right? And I'm like,
caddy.
yeah. But he didn't talk any shit or anything
He didn't
like
push
that.
you in the bag, nothing?
No, he didn't say anything. And, I didn't want him to lose his confidence. I was hoping he could get out of there with a bogey. He ended up making double, but he went into a very dark place for about 45 minutes after that. But he didn't say shit. He didn't really say shit to me. I heard him mumbling in Korean, but I know all the key words when it's something to the caddy, and it was never at me. But all he said to me was like, "Oh man, that was like a good line." And I just, and I was like 8 yards right of the flag. It wasn't a good line for him, and I just kind of said, I'm like, well, I'm just going to take the heat. I'm going to be the fall guy for this one, because I didn't want him to fuck with his confidence, right? So I'm like, hey, man, then maybe that's on me. I should have told you to hit a full one left of the flag. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, you don't need to tell a guy that's played there 5 or 6 years on that pin and to be left of the flag. So the only weird thing about that hole was when we were walking up, and it was well short in the water, right? And when we were walking up, the dad starts chirping in Korean, right? Because there's a ball sitting there that's half in the water and half above, And he goes, "Oh, Dad, say that my ball," right? And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not your ball. We were way short of that, but And he's like, "No, Dad, say that my ball." And I'm like, "That's not you." He goes, "Can I play it?" And I'm like, "You already hit your other shot. There's no mulligans on the PGA Tour." But I made it a point where we both walked up there and we looked at the ball, and he has a big line over the script that goes around the golf ball, for putting and stuff like that. Wish he would have used it more last week, to tell you the truth. And it wasn't his ball, but it was just weird how the dad came to the ropes and everything like that. And whenever something like that happens, or there's a ruling, the dad's right there, right? He like wants to make sure his son's taken care of. And I'm pretty experienced with rules and that kind of stuff. But shit, man, it was a good week. T42. I mean, finishing at 200, that was like the worst he could have shot. I did have a fun hole with him. I want to say it was on Friday on 17, it was a front right pin, and he hit the same exact flare 8 iron where he just doesn't finish, and that's always been his miss. Hey, you know what the funny thing is? I remember the year that I worked for him. I always had problems with him when it was an 8 iron, which is weird because anytime Troy Merritt's on an 8 iron, you can just bank it's going to be within 10 feet. So it was the polar opposite. And it was just a fun week. It was a fun week. I mean, we were never really in the mix except for day one, but there was always that hope that he was just going to get it going because you know him, he can make a bogey or two, and then you know you're going to hit an hour and a half stretch where he's probably going to rail off 3 or 4 birdies. And he gave himself so many chances, and he was so cool. He was so cool to be around for 1 week, and I never felt him go on tilt or anything like that. And I think I think he's a little bit tired, and he's got these 2 big tournaments coming up. So I did the 1 week, and here I am back at Bay Hill with Troy. We played 18 holes today. I mean, that'll come up a little bit later in the segment, but it was a fun week. It was good. It was good to reunite with him. You know, I love the kid. I know we've had problems in that kind of stuff on the golf course, but he's just a good kid, and his whole, he's married now. He has other things going on, but he lives and dies by golf, right? His whole life is golf and success and everything. And it's just, we were talking and I'm like, God, how long have you been on tour now? Because time goes by so fast. Sungjae's been on tour. This is his fifth year. And he was even like, oh my God, Sheba, so fast, 5 years. And I'm like, you're 23 now or 24? He goes, 24. I go, man, you were a rookie when you were 19 years old. So I still scratch my head though. And I'm like, how's this fucking guy? Because he is a machine, right? I'm like, how does this guy not win 2 or 3 times a year? So, you want to talk about the caddy drama or
I mean, since we're
want
talking
okay.
about it, let's
Yeah.
break into the breaking news caddy
Yes.
edition. Who's on
Yeah.
Sung Jae's
Okay.
bag?
So so who is on Sungjae's back? I brought in Lance Bennett I'm the Korean agent. So Lance Bennett, who was our guest on the previous episode, who recently split with Davis Riley after a season and a half or whatever it is. So it was kind of a last minute thing, but I was kind of giving Lance a heads up early in the week, like, hey, this is, I'm not sure I do know what they're looking for, but I'm not sure what they're looking for. And then, I had to give not like full sales pitch, but when you deal with the Koreans and they don't recognize a name, they can't put a name with a face. They immediately go to Google. So if you go to Google with Lance, you're probably going to hire him, and so Lance is going to be on the bag for a couple of weeks and see how it goes. So that's the breaking news. Bobby's staying put. I'm super happy with Troy. It's funny. I was telling Sungjae, I'm like, Troy, yeah. And he was talking about how Troy was to work for. And I was telling him, I'm like, man, he's the coolest guy. He's not playing good. He's missed as many cuts this year, it seems like, as he did all last season. And he's just in the funk with the putter. And you probably saw on TV, we were having some fun out there.
You
And for
were.
me to
You were the
get him
featured group too.
yeah, but for me to get him to smile and enjoy and relax himself, I felt like that was mission accomplished for me. Even though he doesn't like a caddy that talks with other people, and I don't talk to other people during the round, other than maybe when you're floating down the first fairway, hey, where are you staying or whatever. But other than that, that's like a big pet peeve of his, having his caddy all plugged in all the time. And he told me that's one of the reasons why he made a change with Billy, because Billy yucked it up. And he could be bullshitting me too, right? It could have just ran its course after 2 years. So he was telling me, oh, Billy talked too much to other people and he's a little slow to the ball. And I'll tell you, I started using a double strap this year when I shot my back before Sony, right? And I'm like, I told Troy today, I go, I don't know why I didn't wear that big, when it gets hot, that big Aussie style hat and a double strap, because I felt like I can caddy till I'm 80 now, because I don't get tired. I don't get beat down with the heat like everybody else is. I saw Cooch out there. He's sweating bullets and, dehydrating out. And I feel so super duper fresh out there, and I'm off track as usual. But so
Oh, that's
Lance is,
okay.
but the big news was that I had shared with you last week was when I got this text these texts and from him and his team. They were coming at the same time. They were just firing bullets at me. You know, as you know, I'm going to tell everybody else. They went right by me and they want to hire my son, Daniel, who is very extremely happy with Pierceson Coody. So I called Daniel and I told him this, and Daniel was like overwhelmed, like emotionally overwhelmed that like wow, this player is coming back to me, this big time player. And I said, listen, don't give me an answer. There's no reason to give me an answer. You got to focus on Pierceson this week. Here's what I'm going to do. They said they wanted him to start at Honda last week and give him 3 weeks and see how it goes, right? But I'm like, that's not going to happen. Daniel doesn't roll like that. And they're like, hey, you want to come in? And I told you the story. You call Troy and see if it's okay with Troy, and Troy was all for it. So Daniel, it didn't take Daniel very long to just come out and say, like, hey, Dad, I'm not, and I'm so proud of him. Dad, I'm not like that 99% of those guys that sit in that caddy room. That's not my deal. I'm not bailing on Pierceson Coody. We are friends. We have a great working relationship. I believe that he's going to win major championships. And it was just, I had so many players come up to me because the word started getting out after Daniel said, hey, officially, I'm not going to do it. They're like, your son turned that bag down? I'm like, yep, he sure did. And everybody said the same thing. Good on Daniel. They all said, Charlie Hoffman, who usually talks shit, one of my buddies, he's like, man, I am so proud of that kid of yours. And then Charlie, always a smart ass. He's like, finally, you fucking did something right in your life, Bob. So I felt super stoked for Daniel and Troy. Everybody thought it was a great decision. But with all this gossip and everything that goes around, apparently some of these scummy dirtbag bottom feeder caddies, and there were plenty of them at Honda last week in that field. That's some of those caddies you don't even recognize, you don't even know who they are. Especially apparently okay, so let me back up. James Hahn reached out to Daniel because he felt guilty about firing Daniel after those 4 weeks, and James Hahn told Daniel, he's like, listen, I want to check with Pierceson, but I'm so stressed out about the way I was playing, and I didn't handle this professionally. Daniel, will you come work for me in the Players Championship, right? Another week for Daniel and a massive purse. So Daniel talked to Pierceson. Pierceson's like, man, go. It's going to be more experience for you when I get to the Players at Sawgrass, and it's only going to help both of us in the long run. So the word got out about that. So some of these scumbag, I'm going to call them fucking bottom feeders because I can't find out who they are. But apparently they went up to Pierceson's agent last week behind Daniel's back and a little bit behind my back. They're like, hey, we hear Daniel's making a change or making a move. And that starts the whole rumor mill thing. So Dan was telling me a story that they were on the range one day, and Mike Chisholm is his agent, right? And he's like, hey, Dan, can I talk to you for a sec? And Dan's like, sure. And he's like, hey, are you thinking about making a move or something? And Daniel's like, what are you talking about, making a move? And he's like, yeah, I have caddies come up to me and ask me, is Pierceson going to be available and that kind of stuff. So Daniel, not like me, cannot poker face somebody in the eye, like, if you know what I'm referencing, you know what I mean. Daniel is a straight shooter. He is honest as the day's long. He's never done, and I'm not saying this because of my son. He just has a conscience and a heart, and he's not going to bullshit anybody. And he flat out told Mike, he goes, Mike, here's the fucking deal, man. I got offered the Sung Jae In bag, right? And Dan's like, the agent said, like, step back, like, you got offered Sung Jae's bag? And he's like, yeah. But he's like, I'm turning it down, man. I'm not going to do that. I believe in Pierceson. So there was a lot of drama, and I think that is an easy thing for me to deal with personally, 16 or 17 years later. But I know that it wears on Daniel, because he's not the kind of person like everybody else I just referenced in that room, and I know it. I think it wore on him a little bit last week, where he's just like, I wish everybody would just shut the fuck up. And he had an okay week. They played great the first day. Pierceson Coody played great the first day, shot 4 under. He had really good scoring conditions, and then I think he had a rough day on Friday. I think he got in the house at 75 or 76. He actually had to par the last comeback Saturday morning to finish and make the cut on the number. And then he got off to a rocket start on the front. I was watching, on my phone. He made a few quick birdies, and then he got it. And then, he had a rough 45-minute or an hour stretch from like 13 through 15, which everybody can do out there very quickly. But, he played pretty good over the weekend. I think he went 70, 71 over the weekend, which is, excuse me, which is not horrible. He finished like 63rd, maybe shot a couple over for the tournament, but he got some more experience. But I'll tell you a funny story was, early in the week, and we get we're taken care of food wise, right? But for some reason, every year at Honda, like the people that prepare the food, and I think they're employees there, they like come out late with the breakfast, and they just don't give a fuck about us, which it's true, which is surprising to me, because we're all pretty good tippers in there, right? And if you have 150 caddies in there, even if every caddy's only throwing down 20 a person. That's some gratuity that's getting split up, right?
True.
That's beside their wages. But I took a bite into a couple of those breakfast sandwiches or tater tots or what sausage or whatever, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, did nobody even heat this up? So I just stuck to oatmeal because it's impossible for the human being to get, you know, to get sick off of oatmeal. So apparently Dan and a couple other caddies and a couple players got food poisoning from whatever they ate. The mystery thing was on Sunday. I didn't ask Dan what he ate. So Dan was going to wait for me after the round on Sunday because our tee times were so different. We were going to drive the 2 hours down the turnpike here to Bay Hill. And I text Dan, I'm like, hey, where you at, kid? And he's like, Dad, I'm sick and shit. I'm throwing up. I think I got food poisoning. I thought he was dehydrated. He's like, no, I was drinking a lot of water. So they had a Monday morning pro-am out here at the crack of dawn at like 8:30 in the morning. So he rolled into town and, I just told him, I'm like, hey, here's the deal. I've been to Bay Hill 15 times. It's going to be 90 degrees later in the week and it's going to be windy as shit. I'm like, why don't you just rest and tell Pierceson I'm going to come out and caddy for him? So I get to caddy for Pierceson Monday morning for 18 holes. And I was sharing this with you. I'm going to try and talk slower this episode because I listened to myself on last week's episode and I'm going to give myself a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Our viewers liked it. I didn't. But I watched this guy play golf, and he is a fucking flusher of the golf ball. The sound that it makes coming off of the club face, I have not heard in I can't fucking tell you how long. And I was like, after like 3 or 4 holes, Matt, I'm like, no wonder fucking Daniel's not making a move. This is like a fucking freak ass talent that comes around. This could be like a DJ talent, That was his first PGA Tour event last week, and he made the cut on a super hard golf course. And I'm just like, I walked out of there, and we had a TaylorMade rep who is kind of like the TaylorMade rep. His name's Nick. I'm not sure of his last name. And he followed us for 18 holes. And I'm like, every 3 or 4 holes, I would let Pierceson walk away. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? He goes, man, I'm glad you're out here watching this because we kind of wanted to ask you what you thought. And I'm like, this guy, and I said it to him, I go, this guy is a fucking flusher, and he's a flusher with hands, right? You know what I mean? Like if
Yep.
you're, I watched him hit this 5-wood on 6, which is the famous dog leg right to left all the way around that huge lake, that par 5 that Bryson drove it over the corner the one year, the 360-yard carry or whatever. And he was in between clubs, and he like fucking took some shit off of a 5-wood. And I'm like, oh my God. And I turned to Nick and I'm like, that is something that can't be taught, right? That's years of this kid learning how to hit that shot over water, holding something that's got a cover and land soft on that green with a 5-wood up in the air. And I'm like, oh my God, he can roll the pill, he can chip. I'm going to say he's like super golf smart, but he reminded me of Dustin a little bit, where he was a little bit out there. Like his mind's a little bit all over in between shots and stuff like that. And I noticed one thing too, his attention to this is the Pierceson Coody episode early before he goes Yahtzee. I'm telling you right now, his attention to detail and practice rounds and stuff like that. Like this kid has been watching Bay Hill since he was probably 8 years old. So I'm like, hey, do you want me to drop tees, for what, during this pro-am? And when you finish hole out, you can go putt. And he goes, oh, no, I know where all they are. And he's describing every tee shot to me. He's like, oh, everybody hits it up here. Everybody, a super bomber's going to take it over the corner here. And I'm like, wow, I just get to sit around for 5 hours and watch it. Probably a future multi-major winner, I'm predicting. I hope I don't put the
Wow.
whammy slammy on him, but this kid's got some kind of a game, man. So it's been a really fun 8 or 9 days for me, So I really enjoyed last week. I really enjoyed getting to know Pierceson. Yesterday they came back out. Dan was up at the crack of dawn. They went out again today, and it made me so proud because we didn't tee off until Troy had to play in the 5th major. The Seminole had their pro member that that everybody was as good as this field played in. So everybody kind of rolled in late, all the big time players and not such and the mid pack players. So Troy didn't tee off today till like 1:30 or 1:45, but we're out there, and there's like nobody out there in the afternoon. And who's finished work, and what caddy comes trucking backwards from 9 going to rewalk the front again? The kid Daniel. So all systems go for that team. It's going to be a tough week. This golf course, Matt, it was a little receptive yesterday, but they're already watering the greens in the afternoon, and it's going to get out of hand. This was that tournament I told you last year where Troy starting Sunday was 5 off the lead. Nobody laughed at me when I tell you that a tour pro shot 87, but Troy shot 87, and we were talking about it today. He's like, he maybe hit 4 or 5 like really horrible shots, right? Like, if you missed the green or in the wrong spot or something like that, you couldn't even hold the green. Throwing one way up in the air with a 60 or something like that. I'm talking about standard chips, so it's going to be a tough mental event this week
Wow. Get
with some
prepared,
nat.
folks.
I don't. Well, I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know what these scores are going to be, but man, if here's the deal. I don't want to tell you something right now because I think it's going to affect our penny bet. But the new and improved honest Bobby Brown, it's supposed to pump 30 or 40 on Friday. So everybody's praying for a early tee time, right? Late on Thursday, early on Friday, beat the win day, and we got fucking first off
Hang
finally
on, let me
on
go check
Friday.
the tee times.
No, yeah, I know. Well, I already did. So I figured I'm like, I'm not going to backdoor. I'm not going to backdoor Matt on this. So I've actually got 4 guys that I picked in order of who I'm going to
Wow.
go with. And they're all, and I'm going to be honest with you, Matt, they're all coming out of the early morning wave on Friday. So I don't know if you've already picked somebody in your mind or I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's my little tip for you. It is going to pump on Friday, but poor Daniel and Pierceson, they're last off on Friday in the afternoon. And you know what
Oh,
can happen out here
you hate to
if they
see it.
lose these greens, you hate to see it, but man, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 under could win this thing this week. I don't think anybody's going to get to double digits. I really don't. I wasn't that far off last week when I told you 12.
You did not.
You
I
you
mean, you were right
no, and it
there.
was 14. 14 played off, and those winner the 2 guys in the playoff, Kirky and Eric Cole, they did not go away. You know what I mean? None of them really went away on Sunday and opened up a lead or anything like that. So I was pretty close. I was pretty close last week. I was telling you, with that Bermuda rough gone and some bunkers gone and the greens receptive, and that was what Sungjae was saying the whole time too. He's like, this no regular Honda, bro. This not Honda. Greens soft, no rough, just hit shot and
You gotta
just
make pots. Sungjae, you
yeah,
gotta
you
make
got,
pots,
yeah,
bud.
yeah. So he'll
But
probably make them this week, right? When I'm back to work for Troy,
oh,
which is no big
definitely.
deal.
But we
Yeah,
got to give an
that's usually
applause to
what
Sung
happens.
Jae for the maturation
Yeah,
phase that he went through. Way to
yeah,
go,
yeah.
Sung Jae.
I'm not even gonna buy that, but on his
The
part, that
one
was
week
just a one.
honeymoon.
Yeah, that was the 1 week honeymoon. So it was super enjoyable. What else you got? You want
Well,
a
here's the
rundown on the
thing. I mean,
course or
well, hang on a second.
all
We had
right?
story time with Bobby.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I
There
forgot
was
about
no
Matt,
mad time at
the guy who
all.
runs it.
Oh,
Yeah. What about
geez.
Matt who runs
God,
this corporation?
I've been
Let
so
me
pumped
guess.
up about this
Let me
past
guess.
week. Go ahead.
We're gonna go to Mountain Shadows, and you're gonna give us your weekly rundown on Mountain
Yeah,
Shadows for the big money
absolutely.
game. Yeah.
No,
What do you got?
so Bobby, here's the thing.
Yeah.
There was the championship game, and you know that I'm getting married soon. And sure
Yeah.
enough, my fiance was
Congrats.
like, I'm not playing in it because we play in a co-ed league. And
Uh
sure
huh.
enough, she sits out and she's at home taking care of her billing stuff for work. And so at the softball game, I knew right away showing up that, okay, we're a man down. We got to make sure that we get this kicked off right. And I'm the leadoff hitter. So I get up there, Bobby, slow pitch softball. And
Oh yeah.
first stretch out a double. I'm feeling pretty good. Body's feeling good.
Wow.
Next
We're
at
not even talking
bat.
about golf.
Yeah, no, we're going straight softball because here's the thing. And then next at bat, I tried to stretch a triple. I really
Mm-hmm.
tried to get in there because this was a tightly contested game. We needed all the runs we could. And I knew that I was going to have to make some things happen on the base pads. Sure enough, trying to go for 3, I fucking popped my hamstring.
No,
So,
the hammy.
oh my God, another hammy. I mean,
Yeah.
this thing was ugly. So, sure enough, go into the gym the next day and I tell my trainer, Andrew, I'm like, Andrew, you know that puller plunge in the back, which is the ice bath, but it's like the electronic one in this big, like sophisticated
Mm-hmm.
modern bathtub. I was like, can I use it? He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, go in for like 2 minutes at a time, do a couple 2 minute intervals, and then pump out. First time I stayed in, so I did the 2 minutes, and it's my first time ever doing an ice bath. Have you done an ice bath before?
No, but
Because
I threatened myself after rounds because I read about all these players. Well, that's Tiger's big thing, and now Justin Thomas is on it and Spieth is on it. But I think about it all the time. But man, I can't dip my toes in the Pacific Ocean during the winter, bro.
it
Yeah, I run for the hills.
It's
I
tough.
am not a good cold weather guy. I'm not
No,
a
me
good
neither.
cold guy.
And that's why I live in Arizona, because as
Yeah.
a New Yorker, I was freezing all the time. Arizona, I like the heat. So I'm like, oh man, this is going to suck, but I know I have to do it. So I go in, and sure enough, like that first minute is all about getting your breathing under control because you start hyperventilating. Finally got the breathing under control. I'm like, oh, this is nothing at all, because you start losing like the feeling in your limbs. I mean, basically go numb. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
frozen.
that's fine. I'm good. So I ended up staying in. Today I went in as well, and I ended up staying in for a full 14 minutes, which apparently like the recommended like maximum amount of time you're supposed to be in is 10 minutes. Some say 15. So I did 14, and all these guys as I'm coming out were just like, all the trainers were like, holy shit, you were in there for a long time, all fist pumping me as I'm leaving. I'm like, holy shit, like what the hell's the big deal? Apparently none of them
What?
use it. Apparently it just
Right.
gains you a bunch of respect. But I'm sitting in there, and again, once you get your breathing under control, because I do a lot of meditation, so I got that under
Mm-hmm.
control. Going back though to last week, Bobby, here's the key. Pin position 4. My
Mm-hmm.
dreaded pin position 4
Mm-hmm.
was the Friday game after I popped the hamstring. So of course I did the puller plunge. That was the first day that I did. It was Friday morning. End up going out there, and I'm limping my ass off. I can barely walk. I felt like Tiger. Like the swing was fine,
Mm-hmm.
but the walking was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But I had revenge to take out on pin position 4. Okay.
Right.
Me and Pablo have had a talk. No, we have
Yeah.
not. That's never happened. But
I know. I'm full of shit.
we came to terms, myself in pin position 4, dropped 8 birdies, 5
Wow.
bogeys, and
Wow.
ended up 3 under. Took a lot of money
Yeah.
that day off of the
I was
boys,
gonna say.
and I
Yeah.
got my fucking revenge, Bobby, on pin
Yeah. Good
position
for
4.
you.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
Did you go
all
over
is
to
right in the
Pablo?
world.
Did Pablo have you over for a little El Pastor and some Spanish rice
Not yet, not
m-
yet.
maybe
I'm waiting
some
for the invite.
serrano peppers or something like that for your booty hole? Pablo for president. El presidente,
Tom
Pablo.
Tomorrow morning we're getting out early too. It's supposed to be dreaded weather over here on the west, and we decided, hey, let's try to get in a game before the wedding on Saturday. And I wasn't going to be able to do Friday because all the rehearsal stuff and dinners and
Yeah,
everything. So going out tomorrow morning too. So we're gonna stretch it out, see if we got some
right
more
on.
action for good old Mountain Shadows. But that pretty much wrapped up the week. Now let's
Nice.
move on to our Honda
Sure.
Classic recap,
Yeah.
Bobby, where
What a
Chris
great.
Kirk hangs
Yeah,
on, just hung
he
on.
did. He did. Can I say something for the record? He
Yeah.
wasn't go. He wasn't. He pushed that fairway wood in
Mm.
regulation. He wasn't going at that. You'd read that shit on social.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't going at it. He pushed it out to the right, ended up hitting the top of the rocks. Oh, Bobby, you're back. So you froze out there for a second. Continue. Uh-oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute now. Oh, we're having a full debacle here. Bobby's having some serious issues. Oh, you're
What about
back.
now?
You're back.
Yeah. You think it was
Oh,
my, they were popping out of my ear or
it
something.
coulda, yeah.
So can you hear me now?
Yeah.
After last week episode cutting in and out, geez Louise. I was talking about him. Social media people were roasting him, like, how does he go to that? Like, fuck, he was trying to hit it in the left grandstand and he just pushed it out there. But I was referencing Kip Henley, who's a fucking self-proclaimed super genius, but because I saw he threw up a tweet, he's like, I don't know what Chris, if I was looking for Chris Kirk, I would have thrown his woods behind the tee and made him lay up. And I know he stuffed the layup in the on the playoff hole, but that's not a wedge shot that anybody wants. All you got to do is push it a little bit, and you're even in worse position. But it was a great tournament. Isn't it funny how that tournament, Matt, always seems to end up in a playoff? That's a
It
shout out
really is.
to that golf course. Almost every year it ends up in a playoff. So it was a great tournament, great finish, great for Eric Cole. I mean, he's 30 some years old. I didn't know his mom is Laura Baugh. Remember Laura Baugh, who was like the sexiest LPGA player?
Oh, you know what?
Do you
That's
remember the
ringing some bells
blonde?
now. Yeah.
She used to do the Colgate commercials and everything like that. She was
Yeah.
really gorgeous and she was like
Oh, I
brought a
didn't
lot
even
of
put
femi.
that together. I knew
Yeah,
that the mom would
I
played on the
read that.
LPGA, but
Yeah, it was Laura Ball. She brought a lot of sexiness and femininity, if I said that right, to the LPGA tour. She was like the first one. And I guess his dad played on tour for a long time and he won a
yeah.
tournament. So, you know, he was in a great position to win after Chris made that mistake, and obviously he had some nerves on that chip and ran it through the green and laying up against the collar. And man, he hit a great putt, that caught the left edge in regulation. But that's just another great story that you get to see in these fields of how deep the talent is. What people don't realize out here is how good number 92 on the FedEx Cup list is. Is like if you went and watched 92 on the FedEx Cup list play 18 holes of golf somewhere, you would go, "Oh, this guy would win 5 times on the PGA Tour." It just goes to show you what a freak that John Rahm or Scotty Scheffler or Rory or Dustin or all these other guys or Cantlay, how freaky good they were. But it was a great week. I mean, Sepp Straka played great again. He finished 9 under, tied for fifth. Justin Saw, who shares the same agent as Troy does, a buddy of mine named Peter Webb. He had a great week. I think he finished at 9 under, tied for fifth. Shane Lowry was right up there all week. Our boy Pierceson Coody had a nice solid week for his. I'm going to give everybody a name to remember that just showed up here from Europe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He just cracked the top 50 in the world. You might not know this name, but everybody who gambles on golf needs to remember this guy. His name's Adrian Meronk. Okay, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure where he's from, whether it's the Netherlands or something like that, but he is about 6'6" tall. He just looks like a complete athlete. He's top 50 in the world. I think he finished 14th last week, but that's he's going to be in the players. He's in the players next week. And he's been over here for 2 or 3 tournaments and has been in the top 25, I think, in all of them. But that's just a little Bobby Brown tidbit of information for guys that like a little value for the dollar. I think this Adrian Meronk is going to be over here for good now. So it was a good Honda. It was a great golf course. This is the last year that Honda is going to sponsor the tournament. But did you read what Jack Nicklaus said in the last couple of days? He's like, this tournament is not going to have Honda as a sponsor, but supposedly Jack said that possibly starting in 2024, that they're going to get a new title sponsor. They're going to get a different date at a different time of the year. It's going to be an elevated event. Scottsdale, unfortunately, is going to lose as an elevated
Oh,
event.
no.
Yes, they're going to start switching them around. And they're also going to make Pebble Beach an elevated $20 million event, along with Tiger's event, to draw more people to bigger players to Pebble Beach, which Pebble Beach deserves bigger players, right? Because it's Pebble, right? Could be the greatest golf course ever made, other than St. Andrews,
So
I think.
apparently the
So,
People's Open did not go over well with the players.
well, no, I think I'm not saying that, but I just have a feeling that they're going to switch these elevated events around, right? So they don't play favorites to certain different ones. Like Scottsdale might be back in 2025. Just Scottsdale's still an elevated event to everybody that plays in it because it's so unique, right? And there's so much electricity, and there's actually a golf tournament. You
Wow.
know what I mean by that? Not
Yeah.
just a drinking fest.
Are
So,
you sure? Are
um,
you sure there's a golf tournament that goes on there?
yeah, well, most of the days there is. So, anyways,
Touche.
yeah, that's my rundown on the Honda. We're on to Bay Hill.
Well, I mean, with we are on to Bay. Actually, before we even get to Bay Hill, I do want
Yeah.
to talk about the one kid, the Ryan Gerard, who was a
Oh,
Monday
I got info.
qualifier,
I got
and he
info on
finishes
him.
fourth.
Yeah. So check this out. So I've been raving about my guy on the Corn Ferry Tour that I'm waiting for him to get here. His name's Carter Jenkins, the guy I like
Yeah.
so much. He played at North Carolina. Gerard played at North Carolina. We played all our practice rounds with Ryan Gerard at that Corn Ferry Tour finals, and he got conditional Corn Ferry status. He didn't look like my guy, like Carter Jenkins, the guy that I worked for. He sure as fuck looked like he was really good last week, and he walked away with fucking 400 grand for a guy, 411 grand for a guy that
The
has
game
conditional corn.
changer.
Oh my God. Imagine when he woke up. I think that those funds hit their account on Monday morning. Can you imagine, like, if he went to the bank or he went online and he looked at his checking account, and he's like, oh, I can go to Lululemon now.
Yeah, you
I
can
can
buy
go car
yourself some nice
shopping now.
joggers.
Most importantly, he is right back into Puerto Rico. And it's funny, I was coming, there's a big bridge that goes from like the clubhouse, you go by the first tee and down this big bridge to the putting green, right? So I come down this bridge and I'm standing on the putting green, and this this player's like staring at me. He's like, Bobby, Bobby. And I'm like, oh, who is this? Right. And it was before the week even started. It was on Wednesday or something. And it was Ryan. He's like, oh, it's Ryan Gerard. He's like, I'm Mondayed in. I'm like, holy shit. I was staring at you. I'm like, who is this dude calling my name? And it all came back to me. And it was funny, like on he went super low on Friday, right? I think he
He
shot like
did.
63 on Friday. And right outside the scoring trailer is where they have all the media set up where they do their interviews. And he was out there getting bombarded with questions. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go fuck with him, right? So I said it took him a second to see me, but he was answering all the questions, and it's the first time he had been in that situation. You could tell he was a little nervous with all these questions getting fired at him, and I was back there just smiling at him, like flipping him off and everything like that. Made him loosen up a little bit, but I'm like, hey, good for this guy. And I've immediately got on the phone to text Carter Jenkins that Friday night. I go, your boy Gerard went Yahtzee today. If that's not motivation, I don't know what motivation is. So there's just goes to show you another one. That's why this Monday Q info, Ryan French, who does that Twitter account, who follows all these guys, you know, I love it because, man, there's so many good golfers around that. There's so many good golfers that people don't hear about. And this Honda field was a perfect example, of that. You can, we all know, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but we all know that these live bot. What's a bot, by the way? Can somebody explain to me what a bot is? Is that a human being?
No,
A bot?
usually not, but sometimes
It is.
sometimes burner accounts and things like that. You know about the burner accounts. The burner
Yeah, I do.
accounts are more individuals who set up an account that they know is going to get taken down, or they just have no followers or anything. They created it real fast and they're going to go say a bunch of shit that they don't want to own. Then
Hmm.
you've got the bots, which are fake accounts, and basically they train them to respond with certain things that they want
Okay.
out there. So
Okay.
could be very pro live. If you're talking
Yeah.
bad about live, it's going to come after you. So like there's all these different things that can take place
Okay.
with different types of
Okay.
bots.
I guess the point I was getting was these bots on Live, who are some of these Twitter guys who were just shelling this Honda field, compared to the Live field, and I'm like, who who on the PGA Tour or who in golf doesn't know that these live events are strategically scheduled to be opposite of fields like this? Do you think that they're going to play a live event that's fucking scheduled against Tigers tournament or fucking Bay Hill or the Players or a major? No, they purposely schedule them where you get the bigger players in the world that are resting and taking a week off. But I also do know that I found out today that, did you see what the TV ratings were for Live on the CW? 0.016. What was it for the PGA Tour? What did that come out to? 290,000 people watched it on the weekend at Mayakoba. The PGA Tour event with the so-called weak field drew a 1.60, which got 2.3 million people watching on the weekend. I looked that up because I'm doing my notes this week
You
because I was
are?
so
How about that
shitty
shit,
last week.
Bobby? I thought you were
So
a
these
caddy with just a high school
no,
education. You start
well, I had to.
dropping in some fucking
I
data and
Listen, let
analytics.
me tell you something. If I wasn't associated with horse racing, I would have never passed algebra. But Mr. Liptai, my teacher, loved to bet on some horses, and I'd give him a horse every once in a while, and he'd make like $28, and somehow I passed algebra every single year. So now all that hard education is coming back. So that's why I'm asking what bots are, because the Live Golf latest, I think, is like the one that's the bot. Is throwing up all these. Oh my God, that he's the same. It's the same Twitter that says Pat Perez is the seventh best golfer in the world right now. Did you see that one?
No,
We had a
God,
we had
no.
a
I
field day.
I tend to
We
not
got a
follow
field day
those.
with that one. Oh my God. So anyway, so the CW, and I also read that the CW network, more people watched World's Funniest Animals than they did Live Golf last week. So I shouldn't be getting into Live yet. I should have
We'll,
saved
we'll
that
we'll
for a
get
little bit
into
later.
live in a little
Okay, go.
bit. The other one that I do want to drop in was the quote of the week, which
Yeah.
actually came from my golf instructor. I forgot to mention that in story time that I did
Okay.
meet up with my golf instructor on Saturday, Mike Crea.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
my goodness, he's down at the Raven Golf Club here in Phoenix. And just the knowledge that he's dropping on me is quite insane because I've had a lot of great instructors, and like some of these
Hmm.
pressure things and so forth that we're working on. And the best line all week that I heard, outside of the fact of what you just dropped, because you just reminded
Hmm.
me why this is the quote of the week, is because Live Golf apparently had no actual viewership on the CW, which that's news to me because you and I didn't talk about that
Yeah.
off air. But
Right.
Mike Rea goes, he's teaching me about hand pressure, really, and kind of some unique things going on there. And I'll get into that a little bit more in future episodes as I kind of work through some of these different techniques. But I go, do I want to like maintain that pressure in like a full golf swing? Because we were working on wedges. He goes, Matt,
Hmm.
only if you want to play your best. I'm like,
Yeah.
that is a
That is a good
fucking
line.
quote right there.
Yeah,
I told him,
that
I
is
go, that
good.
one might actually make the fucking podcast because
Yeah, I
that's
could see where
brilliant.
I could possibly use that quote
Yeah,
during caddying,
I think
honestly,
you're gonna.
to shake up the moment,
Yeah.
only if you want to play your best,
Which this leads us right into playing our best, which is with the penny
Yeah,
bets. And man, did we have a
yeah,
lot of
wow.
them last week. That was the
Wow, we
penny
had
bet
four of them.
episode.
Oh my God. Oh my God. How did I squeak that out? Oh, it's funny. You'll be happy to know
You
that
didn't
I
squeak
forgot
out
of.
shit. We tied.
Oh, well, that's what I mean. You were hammering me. Do you know that
Wait,
all I
do
was
I get
thinking
an
about?
apology first of all for
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's good. He's good. And it's fun. It's funny. I'm so wrapped up into what Sanjay's doing because I literally start the weekend and I'm like, I'm caddying for the best player in the field, right? That's
True.
my mentality. If he's making any putts, this guy's going to probably, because it happens that way out here a lot, right? Where a guy makes a quick caddy change and another caddy comes in and fucking boom, they go fucking Yahtzee within 2 or 3 weeks. Obviously, it didn't happen for me that week, but it was last week, but it was still enjoyable. But I forgot about the whole Akshay Bhatia thing, and it was like Thursday or something like that, and was standing on the back of the green or something, and scanning down a leaderboard, and I'm like, is fucking Akshay Bhatia like 2 under or 3 under?
He got
And
the
so
fucking 4 under. I'm sitting there going, oh,
yeah,
Yahtzee,
yeah.
baby, Yahtzee.
So it's funny. So I know we had the well, number one, I apologize because he did
He
make the
made the
cut right
fucking
at
cut, Bobby.
one under. Um, and I was like on Thursday, I was like, where the fuck is Sabo? Right. So I'm scrolling down the leaderboard and I'm like, oh, I'm only one back. I'm only one back. I was one back or two back after Thursday. And I thought, I was all propping Sabo. Now this is six mixed cuts in a row. Sabo shot like fucking 9 over or 8 over on Friday. Complete fucking meltdown, his caddy said. That's what he gets for screwing around on the chipping green when I told
Yep.
you what he was doing
You
on
can't be
last
topping
week
it
on
out there.
Tuesday. No, you can't be topping it out there. So the best part of this is Sungjae had this fucking 3 footer for birdie, and I was watching. When after he made the double on 11, I'm like, okay, let's dig in and see if we can finish in a top 25. We were like T50 at the time or something like that, and I knew exactly that Akshay Bhatia, because I'd seen it on the leaderboard, was in at 1 under, and we had a fucking 3.5 footer on 18 to get to 2 under. And don't think that I wasn't thinking about that. And I'm like, if Sungjae misses this putt, I'm gonna fucking lose my shit, because that got me out of the hole, really.
It
Sungjae
did.
birdie in the last hole.
Well,
And
not just that. I mean, so everybody, if you missed last week's episode, we had Akshay Bhatia, which was my pick.
yeah,
Obviously, Bobby had Sung Jae because he was caddying for him, filling in for the week. And then we ended up doing a side bet, which was Akshay Bhatia versus Rory Sabatini. And then it got as far as you going, well, he's not even going to make the cut. So we made a third bet
yeah,
being Akshay
yeah,
Bhatia versus the cut. So how
right,
it ended up playing out, Sung Jae won by one on the
yeah,
on
yeah,
the initial match. Akshay
right,
Bhatia won by default because Rory Sabatini missed the
right,
cut. Akshay Bhatia
right.
made the cut, so won there. So I'm up 2,000 pennies to 1,000 pennies. Now, I
Right.
know you didn't watch Live Golf, but
Well,
at
I
one
looked at the
point,
leaderboard. I looked at the leaderboard every night at home
yeah,
though.
well, that
So
was at the end of the day. That didn't tell the story come frickin' Sunday because the high flyers. So Bobby and I were betting on who's going to be the worst team out there.
yeah.
And
And
I had the high
who is your
flyers.
team and who's on that team?
So you got Phil Mickelson, you've
Steely
got Steely, you've got Cameron Tringali, and then you've
and
got
James Piot
yes,
and James
yeah. I
Piot.
can't even remember the
Yeah.
goddamn team.
Yeah, and James
Um,
Piot. And then I'm going to go to my grave saying that my team is by far the worst team out there. Kevin Na, Siwon Kim, the quitter, Danny Lee, And who am I missing? Who's the fourth? He has to be Asian or something. The fourth. They're so bad. I don't even know who the fourth
I
was.
don't
But
either.
but let's tell everybody I did win that bet.
You
I
did,
did
but
win
here's
that
the
bet.
thing. Halfway through, actually, I think there were 6 holes left. I
Yeah.
think there were 6 holes to go. And
Yeah.
I was sitting fucking pretty because my high flyers for a team were at even par.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we even got over par at a point, but with 6 holes left, it was even par, and you were sitting at 4 under. I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I fucking got this thing. Out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere, out of
Yeah.
fucking nowhere, your boy Steely fucking came through for you. Steely
Yeah.
Dan fucking
Yeah.
came through and it ends up
Yeah.
going 6 under. And then Phil
Yeah.
ends up finishing the last 6 holes at 4 under. So they
Yeah.
end up at 10
Yeah.
under. So what you saw as the final result, I
Where
was
I won
sitting
by
pretty.
9 shots. I won by
Yeah.
like 9
But it
shots.
wasn't
Yeah.
like I was in the lead with
Yeah.
6 holes left to go, and then my all of a sudden the
Wow.
high flyers go, "Hey Matt, go fuck
Yeah.
yourself because we're gonna finish in fourth to last place, and we're gonna go
Right.
10 under." Where yes, your iron heads ended up fucking winning that one.
Yeah.
So
They're
we ended up
fucking
after all
horrible.
those bets, we fucking
We
finished
broke even.
off at broke even. Yep.
So should we do our penny bet this week before I go on my live rant and run
Well,
down
we're
that live
going now.
leaderboard?
It's time. I mean, you already did cover the analysis around the Arnold Palmer and how we're going
Yeah.
to have 40-mile-an-hour
Yes.
to 50-mile-an-hour winds on Friday. So, yeah, why don't
Yeah.
we just dive right in to the Arnold Palmer Invitational presented by
Right.
MasterCard?
MasterCard. Yeah.
Penny
And
bet.
so I guess I don't have to worry about who you're going to pick because we slicked, we broke even,
We
and
did.
according to my
You're up
homemade Bobby
first.
Brown rules, I'm up first, and I'm going to take Rory McIlroy,
Wow. Good for
and he
you.
plays early on Friday, and you should, if you are looking out of the right
Hang
corner
on,
of your
hang
eye,
on,
and what
hang
I
on. I'm not going to let you get any credit for my
wait,
bet right now.
wait, no,
Absolutely
I'm not
not.
going to. No, I'm just saying there should be three names that you come. There should be two
Oh,
or
here
three
we go.
names
You're going to talk me
coming out
into
of
it.
this wave. No, I'm not divulging any
Okay,
names, but I have a
good.
list of 4 names that I was going to take right here that all come out of the early morning wave on Sunday. And I'm not going to mention who they are, but I'm curious to know, Matt, who are you wagering on this week for a
I
thousand pennies?
for 1,000 pennies against Bobby's Rory McIlroy, who happens
Yeah,
to be is he the second place ranking for the World Golf official rankings or whatever that is?
yeah, I think he
Okay,
is. Yeah, I think Rambo's
so
one.
you've got number two, and I am gonna go with the crafty pick of
Okay, go.
the man himself who
Uh-oh.
loves, idolizes Arnold Palmer and wears slick
Keith
slacks.
Mitchell?
I'm going
Keith
Keith
Mitchell?
Mitchell, baby. Keith
I
fucking Mitchell. He's going to dial it up this week because you mentioned it last week. He loves Arnold Palmer. It's an idol of his. He's playing really well. And guess what? He's got the second earliest tee time on Friday.
Wait, before I divulge my 34, and it's not 40 to 50 miles an hour, it's 30, 40. I don't want people, because I caught myself when I watched the episode last week, I'm like, God, I hope nobody really pays attention to this. I just think I just said three false things and said the wrong thing. But were you picking
Just
him
fake
before I
news.
told you? Were you picking him before I gave you the heads
I
up on the
can't
wind and
divulge
early?
that kind of information,
Yeah,
Bobby.
you weren't.
Not on
You
air.
weren't. You know who I thought you would pick coming out of that wave?
Brian Harman?
Terrell Hatton.
Oh.
Well, no, Terrell Hatton is a past champion there. Terrell Hatton's won there, and he's good on when it gets really, really hard out there. I thought you might go with Keegan because Keegan has a really good history there. And then I don't know. My son actually brought this to my attention too. I knew what was happening, but guess who's been diving in and out of seeing Butch Harmon the last couple of weeks? Tommy Fleetwood. And you know what happens when you go see the
Ooh.
old man for a tune-up, right? They usually play
You
pretty
get
fucking
locked
good.
in
So yeah.
pretty
So
quickly.
I thought I might take Tommy Fleetwood, but maybe
I
that's a
didn't
good
know.
angle for maybe that's a good angle for some of our gamblers out there using Tommy Fleetwood fresh off a couple Butch Harmon tune-ups. You know, it's you get guys like Pierceson Coody and some young guys out here and that kind of stuff. But people need to know that the number one college player has also got a spot in this field. His name's, remember this name, Ludwig Aberg, and I think he's from Sweden. And so that's a name for people to watch this week when they're
Ludwig?
scrolling. Ludwig, Ludvig, and then his last name's Aberg,
Huh.
Aberg, and he either plays at I think he plays at Tech. I think he plays at Texas Tech. He is mathematically he is already mathematically locked up to be, if I'm doing my math correctly, he is automatically mathematically locked up to be the number one college player, which I think is going to get him right to the PGA Tour
Yep.
next year. So we're going to get a glimpse of this supposed superstar in training, Ludwig Aberg. But I'll be
Cool.
fucking yeah, but I'd be shocked if he's as good as Pierceson Coody. I will tell you that much. Who was the other number one college player coming out last week? So, anyways, that's a little Bobby Brown tidbit of information for some people out there, on
You
some people
gotta
to
love
watch.
that. You
So we
gotta
got
love it.
action.
We
We got
got action.
action.
You want anything else there? Any side bets that you can think of, or are we just
Um,
going one solid penny bet for 1,000 pennies?
yeah, let's just go for with one. That four
Okay.
bets was too stressful for me.
It was a lot to
Yeah,
keep
it was
track
fun.
of. It was
Yeah, it
fun.
was
I
fun.
mean,
Yeah,
I
it
had
was
an
fun.
action-packed weekend because of that.
Yeah,
I
I want to
really
dive
wanted to
in.
brag, but
I
it
don't
didn't
want to
happen.
I don't want to intro Liv because I don't want to take your job, but I'm going to remind some people, other than my saying that Kevin Na's team is fucking pathetic this year, um, about the two really good calls. One of them I hated to make the call. The other one I looked like a fucking genius on. But intro us into Liv, Matt. Why don't you? Are
Why
we
don't
there
we
yet?
go over a LIV Golf Mayakoba recap?
Yeah,
And yes, folks,
yeah.
it is Mayakoba to me. I don't care what the broadcast team said.
Yeah, the broadcast team's wrong. I've been there 10 times. It is Mayakoba, and
Yeah.
everybody that works there calls it Mayakoba.
And
Mayakoba.
here's the thing. I left last season pretty high on LIV Golf, as you recall. Like I was
Yeah,
like, oh, this is legit. Like it's fun to see the
right.
teams and everything. And I
Yeah.
even heard one of the podcasts, the Four Dads Golf podcast, to where they were talking about how if they really want to get this thing going, then they really need to have a course for each of the teams so that you
Uh-huh.
have home field advantage, kind of like in other sports where you have your home stadium, right? And
Mhm.
that kind of made sense when teams were really regionally based. And I think that's
Yeah.
what Greg Norman tried to do initially was get everybody
Yeah.
who was Australian and get them all on the same team. Get the East
Right.
Coast
The
US
Latin the
team, the West Coast, the Latinos,
yeah,
right?
the
And get all
Latinos,
of
the
those
Asians.
teams.
Yeah.
Yep. And then, that would make sense to have these regional golf courses that you assign as, hey, that's your home golf course. Get playing privileges, whatever. Or I mean, even with the amount of money that the Saudis have, I mean, just build some new fucking golf courses, right? And turn them into
Right.
their team golf courses. That could have been pretty cool. And I'm sitting there in this first event, and I had some pretty high expectations, actually, which you know me. My favorite quote is expectations are the killers of dreams, which is
Yes.
why when you
Yes.
dropped
True.
expectations
That's
on
a fact.
poor Pierceson Coody saying he's going to
Yeah.
win all these majors, Pearson, I hope you don't listen to this fucking podcast because
Right.
of that in particular. Focus on the task at hand, one shot at a time, buddy, one shot at a time. It's tough. But Live Golf, it fell flat for me. I felt
Yeah.
like there was no fans out there. There was
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nobody. I mean, you watch the holes, you're following the last group on Sunday with good old Chucky Three Sticks, which when I was growing up,
He's a
I
man.
love Chucky Three Sticks, man, because he was a
Yeah.
small
Yeah.
dude, skinny dude, and I was always a pretty skinny dude, and he was
And
bombing the ball
he
300.
shipped it. He
He
shipped
did.
it.
I mean, that
Yeah.
golf swing was just fucking money, and he was so good. But that flat stick would let him down, and
Yeah. You
he
nailed
couldn't
it.
put it all together. I mean, he was like the Colin Morikawa with his irons. I mean,
Yes.
just stuffing shots. Anyways, so Chucky Three Sticks ends up with the victory. We've
Yep.
got
16 under. 16 under.
very
Shot six.
solid.
Shot 63 on the last day, and I'm gonna jump ahead of you real
Yeah,
quick
do.
because it's uh, I'm gonna say a couple things. Nobody on the PGA Tour in the last 20 years has anything bad to say or anything negative to say. Charles Howell III is the best thing about live golf, other than maybe Dustin's ability to be such a great golfer. But Charles Howell is a complete gentleman. He's got a great personality, a great sense of humor. He's polite. He's nice. It's yes sir, no sir to people that are 15 years younger than him. His caddy is a buddy of mine, Nick Jones, who was a superstar player that didn't make it professionally at Southern Cal at USC, and it just couldn't happen to two nicer guys. I mean, 63 on that golf course. Guess who started making putts finally for the first time in 3 or 4 or 5 years was Charles Howell. And I told you that the greatest round of golf I think I've ever seen with Si Woo at Riviera. I was sharing that story with you last week. You know, um, Charles played with us, and Charles still hits it as good as anybody, right? But it's always like you referenced, it's always the flat stick. So I'm totally stoked that
Well, he
that
went
he
to
won.
Lab Putters. So Lab Putters is the one that Adam Scott has. A lot of guys, I mean, these
Right.
things cost a goddamn fortune. I think they sell some of the
Okay.
putters for like 5 grand. But
Okay.
anyways, moving beyond Lab Putters and to Chucky Three Sticks, it actually made a lot of sense that he looked very free and just kind of willing to
Yeah.
risk it all on Sunday, because there was a great episode that we had going back to episode 3 with David Ledbetter, to where David Ledbetter really kind of took the unfiltered side of this podcast, and I loved it
Yeah.
because he
I
talked about his
remember.
own guy, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how Chucky Three Sticks, and this is the mentality guys get into on tour, is that they're
Hmm.
just looking to make a cut, and then they're looking to secure an amount of money because they don't
Hmm.
want to risk it. Well, now
Hmm.
that he doesn't have to worry about the fact that, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not going to make any money this week, or I've really got to be careful because he's got that
Yeah.
guaranteed money, it has that effect on certain players to where somebody like Chucky Three Sticks, because the story David Ledbetter said on the podcast was that he was in contention on Sunday on a par five, and he was within range of hitting like a 5 wood into this green and two, and
Yeah.
instead, the he sees the caddy pull out an iron and hand it to Charles, and he pulls the caddy over to the ropes, and he's like, "What is he doing?" He's like, "He's in
Yeah.
contention."
Which is illegal, number one, right? You can't do that as a coach. You can't do that as a
Wait, you
coach. You
can't
can't
do that to the
solicit
caddy
advice.
either?
Well, before the shot, no,
No, no,
no. If it was
I don't know if it
before,
was
after the
before or
shot,
after. It
oh,
might have been
after.
for
It
dramatic
had to be
effect, right?
after.
That he was
Right.
saying
Right.
it at that point. But he was telling the caddy, he's like, "What is he doing?" He's like, "Well, I told him that he could get there with a 5 wood, but he goes, no, I want to lay up to this point." He's like, "Why? You're in contention." And this whole entire dynamic took place. But he goes, that was how Charles Howell III, he was like, "I'm
Mm.
just trying to secure second. I'm just trying to secure third," because he wanted his money so that he made sure that he was taking care of his family, his caddy, everybody that,
Okay, that's
and
fair.
there is a dynamic there because you see somebody like Charles Howell III, who hasn't won in forever, all of a sudden
Hmm.
dominating, and especially on a Sunday, when like a guy like
Hmm.
that, if he was on the PGA Tour, he's probably going to be a little bit more,
Puckered up.
safety. Yeah, it's Sammy
Well,
safety in it, as you like to say.
well, I would Sammy safety. That's a good way of saying that. Yeah, I never noticed that with Charles. And I've been paired with him a ton of time. He just hits the ball down the middle and he knocks it on the green, and the flat sticks working. The flat sticks working. He's got great hands. But I'm gonna put, David Ledbetter. He Charles fired David Ledbetter so many years ago, right? And I rank David Ledbetter right up there with Hank Haney, right? They're fucking good resort teachers who are making millions of dollars, you know, helping Mr. and Mrs. Rosenberg try and crack 100 or something like that. They don't even have players out here anymore. I mean, I think Charles Howell went through with the modified stack and tilt with Dana Dahlquist and some other guys. So he's tweaked here and he's tweaked there. But I mean, I'll summarize it like this: fuck David Ledbetter. You know what I mean? He's a fucking douchebag. And that daughter of his. Here's where I'm going to go on.
Oh
Hallie
no.
Ledbetter,
Oh no, I should have never
the
brought up Ledbetter.
influencer.
Ledbetter, you
Yeah.
were great on the episode, buddy. Don't let Bobby
Well,
get you down.
yeah, David, go blow me, David.
Oh
You're
no.
nobody, man.
He's
You
never
fucking
coming
had
back again.
Chelsea. Yeah, Michelle week. We don't want him back. Yeah, he can actually take my spot one week when I take a week off. That's for sure. Enjoy his pompous ego
Oh,
maniac attitude. But
oh
he
my
hasn't been out
gosh.
here for a while.
Bobby's going ham.
Well, he's just like Hank Haney. They think they fucking know everything about everything. As the one thing about most of these coaches, other than Butch, because Butch has been inside the ropes as a player, and there's a few coaches that are like that. But this is one of those guys that have never stood where our guys stand, right, and never walked a day in their shoes under pressure. And pressure is
That's true. It's a real thing.
coaches can't teach guys how to deal with pressure, but Butch seems to have a knack for it. And that's kind of what my angle with Tommy Fleetwood this week, maybe playing pretty good, going to see Butch, because Butch can kick a guy in the ass, right? And tell him, hey, you're too fucking good to play like a pussy or whatever. You're good enough to win. So we'll see. We'll see if that happens. But congratulations to Charles and Nick. They're great guys. The Peter Uline deal working out pretty good for
So
Dustin's team. I
that
mean,
was the other thing that I was thinking is that
yeah,
Peter Uline, all of a sudden, this kid, you've got
Yeah,
guaranteed money, and he starts
yeah.
showing up, which he never
He
did on the PGA Tour.
he couldn't, he never kept his card. He got out here 1 year and then he fell into the 126 to 150 category. He was just another really good player. That was what the when they played college together. When I worked for Kyle Stanley it's the same year as Dustin and Peter Uihlein. And Kyle Stanley flat out told me, it's funny. I was talking to my son Daniel about this last night because Kyle Stanley's name came up, and Kyle would tell me, he's like, I knew I was the best college player almost every week I went to a tournament. I knew that I was the guy to beat. He goes, it was only if Dustin and Peter Uihlein were in the field that I knew that I had to play really good to beat those two guys. And we were going back and forth last week. I didn't think that Peter Uihlein was an upgrade over Taylor Gooch. And if you threw out Sunday's round, I think they were tied for the lead or right around the lead. I think Peter played really good on Sunday, and I think Gooch shot a watch on
Look
75
at
or
you.
76 on
Even though you
Sunday.
didn't watch it, you got your shit
Yeah.
down.
Well, I do, because I look down the lead. I look down the leaderboard. You know what I mean? I'm interested, but I'm not into it this year. Watching it on TV like I was in previous years, because I think this thing's going down. We'll save it for next week. But I sent you that
Can
article. We read that article together.
we did.
About, yeah, and we'll save it. Maybe we'll save it for next week. But it was good. Taylor Gooch is a stud. Brendan Grace played great. He finished third at 10 under. I mean, Paul Casey was right there. First time he's shown any form in God knows how many years. I know he battles. I know he battles with injuries. How about Brendan Steele? How about Brendan Steele, who plays
Steely.
so good on Sunday, finishes T5,
Motherfucker,
700.
he fucking shot
Do you know what
600 in
he
his last
made?
6 holes. He fucked
Do
me
you know
over,
what he
Bobby. I'm not happy with him.
do you know what he made for T5? He made like 700 grand for T5. I mean, that's the biggest hit Steely's made in a long time. Cam Smith, is he losing some fire with all that
Of course
hundred?
he is. He's
Now
out
he
there
he was
talking on the
T5.
broadcast with what's her face about the fact that he has a driving simulator now in his house. So tell me that
Like
he's
for
not,
a car? For
yeah,
a
like
car? Oh
for
yeah.
like race cars. Like he's talking about this and literally,
Only in
uh,
only in Live Golf during a round would somebody bring that up. You're talking about
oh,
the
it
Latino
wasn't
teams.
in the round. No, it was like a
Oh,
pre
okay.
recorded thing. But like he's talking about the fact that he has this great driving simulator in his house, and then he spent a lot of the off season like
Okay.
driving and racing on there. And it's like, okay, so yeah, you guys are not training the way that you were. And then you got
No.
guys that are hungry, guys like a Peter Uihlein, guys like a
Yeah,
Charles Howell
there you
III
go.
that's like, man, I
Yeah.
want to go out
Yeah.
there and perform. And all of a sudden you come off of the PGA Tour, you're on there, and now that stress level, because some guys
Right.
handle stress and pressure a little bit differently. And we saw it with Peter
Yeah.
Uihlein, by the way, because Peter Uihlein, I felt terrible. He actually gutted it out, but he hit like 4 or 5 pull hooks, like
Did
hard.
he?
Like you
Mm,
could have
nice
classified
plug.
those as duck hooks. And he
Yeah.
was in the jungle in some places, like
Mangroves.
mangroves, a
They're
lot of
mangroves.
mangroves out there. And
Uh,
he
yeah.
struggled, but he ended up finishing second, which I gotta give him a lot of credit
Yeah.
for. He ended
That's
up
like two
finishing it up.
million. His caddy is Zach Guthrie, who was there was a young player out here from Illinois that played on tour for a few years that I thought was going to be really good. He's phased out now. His name's Luke Guthrie, but his brother Zach was an assistant golf coach at Illinois, and fuck, he just made what, if he got 2 million per second? That's seven. I'm just gonna say 7%. That's what is that? I mean, is that 100 grand? 200, if I made 140, 150,000 as a caddy for finish in second. I was going to tell you, I thought the Latinos would play. I didn't say it on air, but it's a very Latino biased crowd. So Carlos Ortiz has played good there in the past. I think he finished seventh with Sebastian Munoz, who's no scaredy cat. Matt Wolf actually showed a little form, at 5 under T7. And I hate to say it, but God, the one person
Your
that I can't
boy,
stand in this world, and I called it
your
though,
best
didn't I? I
friend.
told you he was going to finish. I told you this is the only week that he can finish in the top 10 on a live
He
event.
weighs the
Badass
most out
Perez.
there.
Yep, and he made some birdies on Sunday. He definitely weighs the most, and he's the worst dresser by far. So we'll give him credit on that. He finished at 5 under, finished
But he did rock
T7.
those
So
navy Jordans, the midnight navy Jordans,
well,
which I was a
yeah,
little jelly
well,
of. Phil
Perez will
Mickelson
rock.
was out there rocking the Jordans, the AJ ones.
Well, what a bunch of posers.
I
You know,
know.
I mean, come on. The original guy's Keegan with the Jordans, right? Keegan's the original guy. Luke Donald, Camilo Villegas. These guys, Bubba Watson, they all jump on the bandwagon when something gets cool. But that's fat ass Perez in a nutshell, right there, isn't it? Jumps on the bandwagon with it. He's not a trendsetter. He's a, you know, the the world's full of followers, my grandfather used to say, and Perez is a follower. He is definitely not a leader, but he made himself a little lick. He made some
Yeah,
money. He's gonna need it because we
good
all
for
know that
him.
these guys, they're not getting
He's
any of
gonna
the
blow a
team
lot
money.
of
They get,
money.
yeah, they don't, the details on the team thing is, as you know, is that they don't get the team money anymore. They're on a salary. And if the team captain decides that he wants to give them a bonus at the end of the year or a stipend or something, he's going to do that. So there's no more free money for fat ass Prez. He actually has to earn it this year himself with his own individual playing, and not the bullshit. I got $10 million up front, which we all know was a lie. So he made a little bit of money. But my greatest call of the week was, and you laughed at me when I said that Dustin Johnson would not finish in the top 10, and I didn't think he'd finish in the top 20
Oh, I
because
thought
he had,
about you all weekend as I watched
yeah,
him play. I'm like, oh,
well,
damn it, Bobby, you're spot on.
Dustin Dustin Johnson in a 48-man field finished tied for 35th. And can I tell you something? Dustin Johnson, for as great as he is, has an advantage over everybody because he's a great athlete and he's a great golfer, but he also has an advantage on the PGA Tour because he's been out there for 15 years. He knows the golf courses. He knows where to hit it. He'd never seen Mayakoba before. I love his caddy, AJ. I love his brother, but AJ is not the kind of caddy that is getting to a golf course like this in a live event a day or two early and going out there and walking the golf course and learning where to miss and where not to miss. And as soon as that driver gets off the line, with all the jungle, you said the mangroves, you're staring 6 or 7 in the face. So DJ T35, and I fucking called that, didn't I?
You definitely called it.
Bryson
But you didn't see,
DeChambeau.
hang on, but you did not see DJ on TV. DJ looks like he's packed on a little poundage.
Well, I mean, he got 100 some million dollars. I mean, he
Eating
doesn't really.
healthy.
Yeah, eating healthy. I'm sure he is eating healthy. Bryson, a great week for him these days, tied for 23rd, even par. Mickelson, 1 over. T27 just fell out of the top 300 in the world rankings.
Not good.
The disaster, I don't want to say the disaster himself, but he's in a dark place. If you watch the Netflix thing, Brooks Koepka, T27 at 1 over. And I'm going to do something new starting this week for Liv.
Oh.
Let's go over the relegation standings, and I hope that I get to
Oh.
mention Fat Ass Perez here soon. And I think it's going to take about 5 or 6 weeks before he's a bubble boy. But let's go with C1 Kim, part of Kevin Na's solid team.
He's in the
23 over for
relegation.
4 days. Oh, Boom Boom, C1
No.
Kim. Boom
No.
Boom, 23 over. That good other Kepka, 15 over. He's on
Oof.
relegation watch. Laurie Cantor, 12 over. And then if they were going to relegate, there would have been a long playoff between Sam Horsfield, who I actually said can play. What an idiot. Sam Horsfield and Burnt Cheeseburger were both at 11 over. So
Burmester.
we're going to do a
Burmester.
new thing. I'm bringing in the relegation. Those are the relegation
Yeah.
standings
So
right there.
for the people
I
that
already
don't know, but by the way, Bobby, maybe
go.
they're not paying attention to the first kind of day of Live Golf, but the last 4 individual players are relegated and moved off of their
Yes.
teams, and new players are
Yep.
brought in through
Yes.
a kind of like a
Q
Q
school.
school type
Yeah.
of deal, but it's all through that Asian tour that they purchased, right?
If keyword if Liv even makes it that far past this year, which we've shared some information on that article that we read last night. That's Alan Shipnuck, right? Man, he's fucking good at his job.
He
He's
is
a dick,
fucking good.
but he fucking gets the info. So
Well, he's
to
an
clue everybody,
investigative reporter, right? I mean, that's
and
kind
he
of what
does
his
it.
thing
Yeah,
is.
yeah, that's his thing. But he found out to fill people in. So this team money now is Live Golf or something owns 75% of the team, right? So if I interpret it, and you're smarter than me, if I interpreted that correctly, that 75% of that money goes back to them. And then Dustin owns 25% of that team. So that money of the team money goes to team expenses, stipend. There's no flying around free for the caddies or the players anymore. Apparently they travel in pods. God, I was this Shipnuck article actually said that everybody, like some caddies stayed in a motor inn. Did you read that part? That some
No.
caddies, and a motor inn in Playa is scary. I don't know. He might be just calling the Wyndham that we all stay out there, which actually isn't bad, for $50 a night. But he also said that fucking all of DJ's team, including Prez, all flew in fucking privately by themselves, right? So I'm like, oh my God, this dumbass Perez is fucking taking this for granted, all of this money. Now he's flying private with her. We'll just call her Skanky her. He's flying in private with her. And I'm like, this guy's so stupid. He's going to burn through all, she was breaking him anyways, the rumor was. And now they're just, oh my God, it's comical. It's
It
comical to
is,
me.
because here's the thing, their entire thing this year, and Greg Norman said it on air, that their entire, and I don't know why you would say this on air. I guess I get it if you're trying to like market out to rich people, like the
Right.
one percenters. And even, I mean, you're getting even lower than that in terms of the percentages of people who can afford to buy a franchise. But like he said, he goes, oh, the big thing this year for Live Golf is the franchise model, and that we're going to be
Hmm.
selling these teams off to investors.
Right.
And I'm just going, oh shit,
Which they
that's
haven't
your
yet, which they
last.
haven't yet. Yeah, which they haven't yet,
Well, they
you
haven't built
know?
the value around, why would you want to buy one of these teams? It doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. And it's like, okay,
I think it I think according to Shipnuck that they're trying to get, they think that they're going to get some 75-year-old
yeah,
multi-billionaire who's bored at home that wants to buy a
they
piece of this team. But any 75-year-old billionaire is probably a pretty intelligent, highly educated, sharp businessman. And he ain't burning through $784 million like Kim Al Sama Puma, Saudi Arabia leader Aramco is. So,
that's the
man,
whole thing. And that's why I'm like, why would you announce that on air? Because if you go through this year and you don't have a single franchise sold, you
yeah.
failed miserably. And now you're on air saying that this
Yeah,
year was the
yeah.
year that this was the important part to Live Golf, and this is the model that you're going after and all of that. So I get it. You might be using it as a marketing tool, but guess what?
Hmm.
Now there's video of you saying that this is what is going to be Live Golf, and if it doesn't go through and if nobody ends
Yeah.
up buying it, but I can see that based off of that announcement and everything, that their hand is being forced to push that, because that's the only way that the Saudis are going to make any money back, or even
Yes.
like dampen the amount of money that they've dumped into this thing, because people, they did not have a crowd out there, which was really
No.
telling to me. I'm
We
like, that's
yeah,
tough. That's a tough
yeah,
look.
that is tough. They're not making any revenue from tickets. You know who I feel sorry for is I feel sorry for my buddies, some of my buddies that were caddies that got gravy trained it
Yeah,
last year with the prepaid expenses, the parties, not a penny out. They're going yachts again. They're getting all this money off the team money, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, you motherfuckers, everybody took the bait of the first year bait, right? And now these guys are like, hey, don't get me wrong. If a caddy makes, let's say you finish back of the pack and your player made 100 to $200,000, and a caddy is probably going to be at 7% roughly on something like that. So that's anywhere from 7 to 14 grand. That's a nice week for a caddy, right? But when there's only 14 tournaments now, Matt, and you have a Siwon Kim or a Wiesberger or somebody who doesn't really have the fire anymore and doesn't practice like they used to, let's just say that you have 14 events, and you're going to say an average, this caddy, these back of the buses caddies are making 10, they're 14, 10 grand a week. Come 14, they're making 140 grand, but now they're paying their own expenses, which is probably going to be 30 or 40 grand. They get taxed on that. So they're getting taxed on, I mean, now these guys are making like, what 92 on the FedEx Cup list is making. So maybe this thing's going up in a big ball of flames because the TV ratings are going to show after one week that the CW is better for Pretty Little Lies or Dawson's Creek or World's Funniest
I do
Animal
love
Videos or
Dawson's
something
Creek
like.
reruns. They are pretty good.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. All right.
Pacey and
So on to where do they play
Dawson.
next? Where do they play
Tucson. They're
next?
coming to my neck of the
Oh my
woods. I think
God.
I might
Can
get
I?
down there with some boys and
When
put
does this?
together some signs that say
Well,
"Go Fatty, go Fatty."
yeah. Well, well, I am going to say that I'm going to say a couple things. When does that come up in the schedule? It's obviously Norman's smart enough not to schedule it against the player, so
So
it's not
it
next
is
week.
March 17th, I believe, if I'm not
March 17th,
mistaken.
which I think that is going to slice our San Antonio tournament, which is usually a pretty good tournament. We get a pretty good field there. But you want to know my prediction for that? I'm going to make an early prediction. I caddy for. We used to play the match play there for years at
Yeah.
Dove Mountain in Tucson. It took Dustin about 5 years to win one fucking match, and that's where I came up with this. Where he just drove it all over the place, and he wasn't comfortable. He's not comfortable on desert tracks, probably like this Mangrove thing, where you're a desert specialist, right? You live in Scottsdale. You know that there is fairway, there is a 6 yard first cut like Scottsdale or rough, and then there's fucking cacti, and then there's cactus everywhere. And I used to just scratch my head like, I'm like, Dustin be like, Bob, where do I aim this? And I'm like, it's that cactus out there. He's like, Bob, there's like fucking 300 cactuses out there. So I don't look for the big fella to play good in Tucson either. And it's a big boy golf course with some funky ass section greens, right? Some section greens out there. So we'll do that rundown here in a few
Oh,
weeks
absolutely.
when it's the proper week. But on to
Well,
Tucson for the tour that's
on to
following.
Tucson, and then did you see the other piece, which was Thomas Peters getting dropped by Steiny, Tiger Woods'
Oh
agent?
yeah, you
Just
knew it.
like as soon
Yeah.
as it happened, just cold
Where did
turkey. I think he sent him a
where did he?
text or something.
Yeah, he had one of his assistants reach out. You
Yeah,
didn't think that? Well, who was so
savage.
surprised about that? Steiny is a savage, man. Greatest agent in the fucking business. I think of that Tom Cruise movie. When I think of the Tom Cruise movie, where the human
Jerry
head weighs
Maguire.
yeah, the human brain or the human head weighs so and so many pounds. One of the greatest movies ever. So yeah, Steiny dropped him like a hot potato. Hey, I didn't even for all everything that I think I know about golf. I didn't even see where he finished Thomas Peters, but it obviously
I
wasn't
didn't
very
either.
good.
No,
Yeah, I
couldn't
don't
have
think he
been.
finished in the
I think that
top
really hurt
20.
him.
So
I think he did
yeah,
not expect
yeah,
that. And he
yeah,
even said, I think he talked to some media about it, that he was just like shocked. He was more like floored that he didn't get a phone call, that it wasn't like a
yeah.
meeting with Steiny, nothing like that. It
Right.
was just a
Yep.
cold, just hard text
Drop. You're
message
out.
gone.
Yeah, you're out. Get
Which I
yourself
hate to
a fucking
laugh, but
new
I'm a
agent.
savage. So that
Well,
makes me laugh.
and I also, as we both know, we also read in those articles that there's no individual sponsorships anymore or logos for these players. It has to be a team sponsorship. So imagine, imagine all of these guys losing X amount of dollars. I mean, let's be honest. You can read what you want to read about the Adidas dropping Dustin or Dustin leaving Adidas. Adidas dropped him because the story that is out now, the real story is that Dustin went to Adidas and said, "Hey, I want you to sponsor all four of us, so we wear Adidas." And Adidas is like, "We're not going
Nope.
anywhere near that. And thanks for selling so many shirts for us, but you're out the back door too." And it's funny. This Nick guy that works for TaylorMade, I tried to put him on the spot yesterday out there with Pearson, and I'm like, "What's the deal with the contracts with Matt Wolf and TaylorMade and Dustin?" And he didn't really. He might not know. He's like, "Oh, that's a good question for Keith," but I would imagine those club contracts are going bye-bye too, because now everybody has the team bag, and there's no viewership, right? There's no viewership. Nobody's going to see Dustin wearing a TaylorMade hat anymore, or this or that, or nobody cares what Dustin's playing, or nobody cares what Phil's playing, or equipment sales, man. As you know, it's funny. My brother from Arizona called me today, or texted me today when I was having lunch, and his boss, who's very wealthy, is looking for a new driver. So what's the fastest driver out there, right? It's the Stealth 2. It's probably the Stealth 2. TaylorMade makes the best drivers, I think, personally. And he was and I was asking how he played, trying to match him up with the shaft. So I was like Googling some stuff, and I'm like, here's how in the dark I am as a caddy, because you see all the best players in the world and they get all their shit. You know what I mean? Those tour trucks are there. We get hand me down stuff. I haven't paid for I'm not prop in my job or anything like that. But if I wanted something, I can get it, right? But I'm not that guy, and I don't play anymore. But I was like going, I'm looking at the Stealth 2 and the shaft I suggested to this guy. Can, do you know that if this guy gets the driver that I told him that he should get, with the shaft, the proper shaft, he's spending $1,000
Oh,
for the
easily.
Stealth 2. And I was
It's
just
gone way
looking
too
at
expensive.
a Fuji Cora Tour Light speeder, right? 63 grams or 73 grams or something like that. But you're looking at a driver that's $700. And if he upgraded shaft, that shaft could get as much as $500 or $600. I didn't know shafts were so expensive for the big boy shafts. When you see them just roll out of trailer trucks, and reps come out when they're trying to fit guys with, they come out with 6 different shafts and try this or crank this. And I'm like, and now it just hit me today. I'm like, man, these guys are wheeling out $2,000 and $3,000 worth of shafts for these best players in the world. So I didn't know golf clubs were so fucking expensive, Matt,
Bobby,
is
it
what I
was a
didn't
new
know. What a
world. It's
job.
it's one of the
Wow.
reasons why I'm training again, because I'm like, shit, I need some free clubs. Like, this shit's
Yeah,
too
damn
expensive.
right.
I mean,
Oh
you
my
end
God.
up and you go to get fitted too, and it's like it ends up being $1,500 for a driver, just a driver.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh
I
my
was
God.
talking to a buddy that I get PUD, which is 30 to
Yeah.
35% below
Percent
wholesale,
off of
and I'm
wholesale. Yeah.
going, hang on, how much is this putter?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not spending that for even
Yeah.
just a putter, because and even
Yeah.
at PUD they're too expensive. I'm just like, holy
Yeah.
shit, this has gotten
It's
outrageous.
ridiculous.
But the
Yeah.
club industry, they went through their issues several years
Hmm.
back, and then
Yep.
they kind of revamped everything industry wide. And sure enough,
Yeah.
now they're very healthy, but they're also, I mean, shit, this stuff is expensive. Like people,
Oh my
the
God.
average
I
golfer
was
cannot afford, unless you are just extremely wealthy, to constantly be upgrading clubs on a yearly
right.
basis. It's tough.
So I started thinking to myself, and I'm like, if you wanted like the top of the line set, like all the way, let's just say driver 3 wood 5 wood of some high quality stuff, a set of irons, Vokey wedges, throw in a Scotty putter or something like that.
Five
I'm
to
like,
ten.
my I was thinking
Five to ten
five,
grand. Yeah.
right? Oh my God. Oh my God. Thank God for the first tee of America with junior golfers and giving them clubs and stuff like that. Because it,
100%.
it, it yeah, it almost goes back to our guys, like our East Side golf guys, you know what I mean, or based in Atlanta and that kind of stuff, and trying to get the African American young kids up and playing and that kind of stuff. How do they even have a fucking chance when it's that much money? I
Oh,
mean,
well,
it's fucking
Bobby, it's
ridiculous.
not just that too, but it's the industry guys that are working at golf clubs that are the assistant golf pros or working
Right,
in
right,
outside services, and those, like, these guys get paid nothing. Do you know outside
right.
services, just for the masses so that you guys understand, they get paid below minimum wage. They're just like a waiter or a
Right,
waitress, and all they're
right.
relying on are your tips.
Tips.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the
yep,
people that are like, "Oh, I'm good. Oh, no, I don't need my clubs
yeah,
clean." Like,
yep,
still tip, because those guys,
yeah,
like, that's where their money's coming from. And
yes,
when they work at nice clubs
yeah,
and everything, yes, you're going to get a little bit more money, but you still have the people that are going to stiff when it comes to giving a tip. But that's where this industry is so screwed up, and especially out here on the west side. In Arizona, like in New York, it's a lot better, but in Arizona in particular, like, we can have an
yeah,
entire show on this, because these guys aren't even making or cracking $30,000 as
yep,
an assistant golf pro that has to not only do that and suffer to where they can't even afford to make a living, really. And then on top of that, you have to pay for the PGA to go through that
PGA, yep,
program, and
yep,
you're spending
yep,
thousands of dollars out of your own pocket. Some clubs
yep,
are nice enough to pay that for you and reimburse you
yeah,
for it, but man, it
right,
is such a racket. And
and
that's why you don't get these great golf pros
yeah,
that want to stay in the industry. You hear of all these great guys that end up being great business people that all of a sudden they left because they couldn't afford to be in the golf industry, but their passion is
yeah,
golf.
yeah. So, anyways, and a lot of those outside services guys at their home course go out and shoot 66 or 67 like it's nothing, right? And then they go, all of a sudden they get into a first stage skew school and it's 76, 79. These guys aren't big. So tip your outside service people, please. They're part of the industry. They're a big part of the industry. And when I went on my rant last year at Southern Hills about those pin positions and these wackos that set up this golf course, and I made a point on my social media, on my Instagram page. It's like, I'm not targeting the assistant pros who work their ass off or the outside service guys that are going through the program. They have nothing to do with that. They're all hard workers, and they're so underpaid. So tip your outside service guys. Don't throw them $2, man. Throw them a 5 spot or a 10 spot or 20 spot if you can afford it. Make that young guy's day, because that young guy's got a dream, right? To play golf like everybody else. He's got a fucking dream, and it's a tough road to hoe, and it's to hoe, and it's just, I don't know, man. Fucking, I feel for those guys. I worked outside services out at the Boulders for a year, way out there in Carefree at the Boulders. And I did pretty good, but you're fucking doing labor, right? You're fucking cleaning carts and
cold
and
early hours. You don't really have a life because you're normally working 6 days a week. It is tough.
You're shutting down that cart barn by 8 p.m. or 8:30. You're dealing with people who aren't very nice if they didn't play very good, or they're a little bit like this. So take care of the outside service people.
There you go.
That should do it.
And that wraps it up, Bobby. Thanks
all right,
again,
man.
Good luck this
week.
Hey,
Matt.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Big day coming up for you, everybody. Matt's getting married on...
let's not give out the date, but yes, I am getting married soon. Very soon. I don't need some stragglers showing up, Bobby.
Yep. Wish me some luck this week.
Hey, good luck this week. Let's get after it. You and Troy, let's go. All right, Bobby.
All right, brother.
Have a good one.
I'll see you next week.
All right.
Take care, buddy.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2 of the Pull Hook Golf Podcast. Make sure to hit subscribe and go to www.pullhookgolf.com for more